it my turn?
Yeah.
I think someone's gonna turn the lights off, so it's gonna get dark in here. And I'm gonna try to read, even though it's dark in here. I'm Judy Rothman. We've been here, Len and I have been here about 8 or 9 months, I think. You have been so welcoming. It's really, you have an incredible community. Thank you all for being so, as I said, welcoming. We found another new home. So I went to wear a little blue dress. No, you're not gonna see the little blue dress on me, because it would need to be a big blue dress at this point. So, I wanted to, is Claudia here? Claudia is back there. Claudia is gonna come up, and Tom I think is here, maybe, or Dave. Anyhow, there's Tom. He's a Vietnam veteran. Claudia was a flight attendant. She flew a lot of our troops into Vietnam. And Dave Smith is also a veteran of Vietnam, and there may be others. I want to take you back to 1968, because I'm not going to go on this journey by myself. And I want you to remember what 1968 was like in this country. 1968, in fact, yesterday was Martin Luther King's birthday, but he was assassinated in April of 1968. In June of 1968, Robert Kennedy Sr. was assassinated. If you remember the turmoil that we had in 68, not only civil rights, but anti-war, this country was a mess. So, but in my situation, I was graduating from college, and I also want you to think about when you're 21 and the choices, because you're going to judge me on my choice. So I want you to remember the choices you were making when you were 21, okay? And then we can compare them later. So if you have any questions, if you can wait till the end, because maybe during this talk I will have answered them, but if not, hopefully we'll have time, okay? And so today I want to share some of the experiences that I had while working for the American Red Cross during the wars. And then I hope you have a better understanding of what our guys went through. Now, I'm going to hold it together, but like a lot of civilian and military service people, we don't like to talk about the war. So you're saying, well, you're up there going to talk about it for an hour. And I was just saying to Carl, until about 10 years ago, I didn't talk about it. It's hard to drop it into a conversation. It's hard to explain. And besides, no one was really interested. So you ask when if you have brothers or uncles, or I know Cameron's grandfather was there when I was in. So that's how long ago it's been. But about 10 years ago, Len and I were living in Naples, and we went to the Council of World Affairs, and General Barry McCaffrey was talking. And he was talking about women in combat. So during that time, he mentioned the work that we had done, the American Red Cross girls. We were not called Donut Dollies, American Red Cross girls. And afterwards, I went up and I said, thanks for talking about it. I hadn't, put it in perspective. And I said, because I don't talk about it. And he said, if you don't talk about it, they'll never know what we endured. So with that, General Barry McCaffrey had brought you me. And they said this would switch, yes. And in this picture, you'll see General McCaffrey's got the suit jacket on. I decided to wear Army green. These guys are important because about 8-10 years ago, I think General McCaffrey invited me and my family to join him. He gets together with his group every 2 years. And what was special about these guys is they were in the first Cav, and in the end of January, the second TED events in 1969, they kept Benoit Army Air Base from being overrun, and that was of special interest to me because I lived there. I grew up on a farm in Indiana, because I think if you want to hear my story, you're going to hear it from the beginning. And I lived on a little farm in Indiana. I didn't have any brothers. I just had some sisters. And
which one is you?
Yeah, well, I always say I'm the cute one, and that's all you're going to get out of me. Anyhow, so today it's 58 years. And the reason I know it's 58 years is, ready for this connection? I went to Indiana University. Indiana University last went to the Rose Bowl 58 years ago. And I went, so now I know it's 58 years.
Right.
Anyhow, but today, 58 years later, I am still trying to find the words, and you'll figure that out, but not to celebrate the war, but I'm gonna try to inform it. And I'm not ever gonna discuss why it was justified. I can't do that. And I just want you to hear my story, because there were 626 other women who went through what I went through. So this is the start of my story with two of my sisters. We had no military history. My dad was too old to go to World War II. I had no brothers. I really didn't know anyone who'd ever been in the military. I didn't know about, World War II at all. But I do have a couple. My maiden name was Beecham. You saw that. Van Kirk. My mom's maiden name is Van Kirk. And there are a couple of great uncles, Van Kirk names on the Pennsylvania Monument at Gettysburg. There's a rumor that we were on both sides, but I'm going to bring up the North instead. So I went to IU. There's an old picture of Indiana University. I hope you're all going to watch the game. I haven't seen a football game from IU for 58 years. And I was graduating. It was my senior year. It's about January, February. I had a 4-year degree in social work. All you social workers are judging me. Anyhow, I had paid for my own way through college. My dad had died when I was 14, and I really had switched my major, 6 or 8 times. So in about February, they had something called a job fair, a career fair, and I went to it. It was for social work. So there was all kinds of welfare in boys and girls clubs, but they had the American Red Cross. I knew nothing about the American Red Cross. It didn't exist in Hoover, Indiana, trust me. And they had posters of Germany and Japan. So I went up and I said, and they said, we don't have positions there, but we happen to have positions in Korea and in Vietnam. So how do you choose? How do you choose? I was a little tired of Indiana winters, that's a big campus. So I knew it snowed in Korea. I don't know what course I figured that out, but I knew it snowed in Korea. And in Vietnam, there was a war. I marched against the war, very much. How do you choose? How do you choose? I was not interested, and a lot of you are in the same age group, I was not interested in being a wife and a mother at that point. Like most Indiana farm girls, by the time you're 21, you had your 3 marriage proposals. It's not true one was in middle school, it was junior high. The love of my life at that time, Purdue engineering graduate, was 1A, like many of you may have been. He was expecting a call at any time, could not get a job at all. He did follow me to Vietnam, and no, it was not Len. There was a sense of adventure, a great deal of idealism, a whole lot. I was naive. And like many of you, I was a Kennedy kid. Do you remember any Kennedy kids? Ask not, ask not. So I asked not, right? So at age 21, I made one of the most important decisions, if not the most important decisions, and I hope your decisions worked out as well as mine. So let me tell you a little bit about the Red Cross, because I knew nothing. The Red Cross, does blood drives. You can become a lifeguard. They can come in and teach you CPR. That's one of the many things they do. They also are disaster responses. Not as much with FEMA now, but for floods and hurricanes. And Len and I were disaster volunteers and open shelters in Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, upstate New York. And then the third thing, which most of us, unless you've been in the military, know much about, is service to armed forces. And in that instance, no matter where our military are, the Red Cross is there. So you name where they are, Qatar, wherever, Red Cross is there. And we remember if somebody was in the military, the Red Cross would help them get home. They would, arrange for the transportation. They would facilitate phone calls, etc. So that was the Red Cross that I knew nothing about. I didn't even know Clara Barton for sure had founded it. I mean, Clara Barton, after all, she was a nurse on the battlefield, she was a teacher, she was a patent clerk, and she has interesting quotes. The best one, I may sometimes be willing to teach for nothing, but if paid at all, I will never do a man's work for less than a man's page. Come on, Clara Barton, let's hear it. All right? So that's what I didn't know about the Red Cross. And I also didn't know about these women. Now, some of you have read Goodnight Irene by Louise Uriah, and this is about the women in World War II. These Red Cross women who not only ran recreation centers like in London and some of the bigger cities, they also decided that there was a front and most of the guys couldn't come into the cities. So it's called a clubmobile. These were trucks. And on the trucks, sometimes 2 to 3 women. And on those trucks, the back would fold out. They could play music. They could bring a touch of home. And they had magazines, definitely cigarettes. And most of them were equipped that they could make hot coffee. So if you know anything about World War II, it was cold. And they could make donuts on these trucks. Donuts on the truck. So Red Cross girls' donuts, it carried over. Because there's only 20 years, or less than 20 years between the end of World War II and Vietnam. So they are incredible women. I was lucky enough a few years ago when some of them were still alive to hear about their adventures, but that's a great book, Goodnight Irene. What were the requirements for those women? They had to be single, they had to be a girl, and they were older. They were accepting people from 25 to 30. They did not have to be college graduates, but they had to be sturdy. They had to be sturdy. The reason is they changed the tires on those trucks. They had to be able to service them. So sturdy was one of those. Our requirements were this. You could have any major in college as long as you were a college graduate, and you had to be willing to commit to at least 1 year. That's what it was. Some of us stayed 13 months. Rarely could you stay longer. Sometimes a year and a half. I stayed the 13 months. So I knew, I applied for the job. I went to St. Louis, which is the Midwest Red Cross area center, and had 2 days of interviews, and then they do a background check. And one of my colleagues said they even called her second grade teacher. Now, they did not do that for me. I have a feeling they had no clue where Over Indiana was, so they couldn't call up Miss Dixon to find out what I was like. So I got the job. So I had 3 things. I always like to make a list. 3 things I needed to do. Number 1, I needed to call my mom. My mom was a single mom. My sister still at home, and I remember the phone call vividly. Hi, Mom. Judy, how you doing? I said, I got the job. And she says, oh, great. The Red Cross? I said, yes. She said, what are you going to do? I said, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks. And she said, oh, great, you love D.C. I said, from there, I'm going to go to San Francisco for about 3 or 4 days. And I've never been there, so I hope to lose my heart. And from there, we'll go to Hawaii. And she and I had just been there. I hope to get a new lei. And from there, we'll go to Vietnam, and I'll be there about a year, and then I'll be home. And her response to me was, oh, Judy K. You know when they put that middle name in there, things are. And, oh, Judy K, when do you start? And I said, I'll start in July. But I had 2 more things I needed to do. I need to graduate, and I need to get vaccinated. So this is to show everyone that if you whine to me about the flu shot or COVID, I am not at all going to be sympathetic. Because if you haven't had the plague, I don't really. All of our military goes through this all the time. So just to show you what kind of, and the only anti-malaria was quinine pills. So if you are going to design a morale building team, you would say, that's it, right? Those guys, that's where. Those are called Class A uniforms. I wore it this day, I never wore it again. I don't remember ever what happened to it. So here in Washington, we learned about the Red Cross, some of which I just told you. We learned about the military, like what's a brigade and a company and a platoon, please don't ask me now, company. And we learned about the different ranks, you know, how on the uniform it's going to tell you, is it a captain, a major for the officers, and the difference between Navy and Air Force, and the enlisted will have it all on their sleeves. When you see some of my pictures, you'll see how important that was. We also learned what we were going to do. Some of these ribbons, the class was bigger than this, there were another 12 or 15. Some of these people knew what we were going to do because their sorority sisters had gone, or their parents worked for the Red Cross, or maybe they had a brother or someone that had been to Vietnam and maybe had seen one of us. Some of them knew. Those are the people I question. Those are the people I question. What we were to do were we're going to help run Red Cross centers, big centers. We're going to need a giant one in Da Nang, the original one. But because we were to help build the morale, and Vietnam was a different kind of war, we would go to the troops, wherever they were. And that's considered outside the wire, which I knew nothing about. Outside the wire means you're not on one of those big bases over there. And a big base, Long Binh had 60,000 troops. We're not talking small potatoes here. Think how many we were talking about in Afghanistan or in Iraq. One base had 60,000. And to those people, either transportation people or the signal corps or whatever, we would go and present an audience interactive program for about an hour. And the idea with that was, we were racist. When they saw a round eye from home, everybody wanted to talk to us. Everybody wanted to know where we were from. Everybody wanted to interact. But I can't interact in 1 hour with 50 people. But I can interact if we're going to have a concentration game up here and you're going to participate with cards or with your team. We always divided everybody in team competition. We designed them without Google. We designed them without Britannica. We had to, whatever was in our, and it was helpful that all of us had different majors. So there'd be an art major, music major, business major, science major. And the subjects of those programs would be sports. I was really good at that. You know, sports teams, cars, whatever would interest the ages of from about 18 to about 30. That's what we learned to do in DC. Also, we got identification cards. I mean, I really needed 3. What was interesting, and I really never had black hair. What we found humorous, and we always tried to find humor wherever we could, on the back of one of these cards, it says that, and that just says, this person's a non-combatant, and please. And so we assumed, remember, we have the protection of the entire U.S. military. We knew that whoever would capture us would be able to read really small print. That's on the back of one of those little cards, and spoke English. So we thought we would do just fine. And there I am with that same uniform. It had to be the same day. And I can point to a map of Vietnam when it says South Vietnam. So I got really good at that. For those in the military, you see that I up there. That does mean it's near the DMZ, which we figured out a little before. So we spent our 2 weeks in Washington, and we went to San Francisco. And we looked more, now this is very much a military. You see the big arrow, so that's the DMZ. Have any of you traveled to Vietnam on a couple? Yeah. So Len and I, when I went back, we were up at the China border and we traveled all the way down because Ha Long Bay is up there in North Vietnam, if you see pictures of that. But from south down, and you see blue writing on the side, and one you see I Corps, 1 Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps. So if somebody's been to Vietnam, they'll tell you probably which Corps you were in. I Corps closest to the DMZ was mostly Marines. We always sent the Marines in first. That's Tunstead Air Base. Do you recognize it, Claudia? The number of times she flew in and out of there was much greater than mine. When you flew in, usually, you had to make quick trip down, because it was mortared and rocketed, all the time. It was the busiest airport in the world at that time. It was busier than JFK. It was much busier than O'Hare. And when you got off, people talk about the stench and everything, but there was so much jet fuel and everything around that it wasn't pleasant. So arrived there. These are some pictures. I have lots of pictures of Vietnam. Saigon, and I keep calling it Saigon, I never adjusted to home, was considered the Paris of the Orient, so it had wide boulevards, and I tried to show you that, because if you look at the downtown pictures, they're really crowded and messy. And there we stayed for about 2 days, and we were assigned where on that giant map we were going to go. We had been warned about the conditions, that you might live in town in a small house. You might share your accommodations with the nurses. Remember, there are no other females in Vietnam. You might share that. You might have to have outdoor, facilities. You might have to leave. You might live in trailers. There were a lot of trailers over there. The generals, by the way, usually got the trailers. Sometimes they had air conditioning. So we were divided up further. 6 of us went, and then we were divided further. And because I was going up to Da Nang, it's too far for a helicopter, so we had a C-130, and everyone has seen C-130s. These are the ones that the back end drops out, the Jeeps drive in, they've seen them in movies, etc. And that back is, so I want you to know the seat, and that person is sitting on the seat, that is not me. So the next time you're caught in the middle seat, and you're no, just realize you can be back there strapped in. I will say I flew a lot in C-130s because of the distances, but a blue dress will get you a seat up front with the pilot every time. I had been warned about the housing, but again, really naive. And when I was assigned to Da Nang, what did I get? I got a French villa. Are things looking up or what, right? There was no air conditioning. We didn't have mosquito nets. We did have a lot of those little lizards in all the rooms, that consumed a lot of the mosquitoes. There was this very slight Vietnamese gentleman who occasionally stood guard, was in the guard thing out there, but otherwise we were just on the streets and we could walk into town. It was not that walkable when we had a couple of typhoons. And there were about 10 to 12 of us. It was a big unit, so the rooms had, in fact, bunk beds in it because this unit was so big. And it was wonderful because we got to see and exchange ideas. I often say one of my best friends now from Vietnam is Eloise Spell. And Eloise Spell was from Hot Coffee, Mississippi. And I dare anyone in here who's ever met somebody from Hot Coffee, Mississippi. So we're in Da Nang, and there in Da Nang is a place called Freedom Hill. Freedom Hill was so named because it was next to an airstrip, an air base, in which you got to get on your Freedom Bird. Freedom Bird means you got to fly out. So Freedom Hill was an amazing, amazing place. A Red Cross center that could have 200 or 300 guys going through. There was a movie theater, there was a bowling alley, there was a big, I don't know whether it was a BX or PX, there were mess halls. It was, if you managed to make it out of the field for a day or two, you could come there and relax. We wrote letters, we played games, we read the Dear John letters. Ladies, if any of you, we read those and we explained to them they were much better than that person, etc. Anyhow, and we had Kool-Aid and we had coffee, we had Vietnamese gentlemen who made those. And we interacted with there were a lot of Marines because of the 1st Marine Division. Those guys seemed to be a lot younger. I wanted to show you this, mostly because there's a sidewalk and grass, and I'm trying to remember where this is. I think it might be Da Nang. And you see that bag that I'm carrying. It's that bag that we're going to put that audience participation program in, because it has to be mobile. We have to be able to carry it on a boat, on a truck, on an LOH, the light observation helicopters. a regular helicopter. It has to be mobile, and 2 of us have to carry it. We could have used a Martin, is what we should have had over there in that bag. This is me, it shows the silly hat. We had, I don't remember suntan lotion, so that I'm still paying for. This is one of the places we would go, and this was near Da Nang. It's civilized, the guys have shirts on, you're gonna be able to figure it out. And this might be a transportation company, it might be headquarters company. It's around, you can tell there are buildings in the back, so this is a reasonably near in a base, and I can't read his thing, maybe somebody who's better at military can show you. So we would go there for about an hour, get back in the Jeep, and go on to the next place. Here, you can see that sometimes we're still near civilization because see, you got the Quonset huts back there, you've got bleachers, and here we're doing a game where you could move a turtle on a string, so we had those kind of races. We really just wanted to take them out of the war for an hour. That's what we wanted to do. The South China Sea is one of the worst pictures you'll ever see of South China Sea. Need to get that changed. It's near Da Nang. It is beautiful. They sometimes use it for an R&R. And Monkey, if you traveled there, Monkey and Marble Mountain are there. And so if you went and you got the carvings, we would go up the top of Marble, and because there was a signal corps up there, and also there was a radio station up there. And we took turns being on the radio station, if you remember Good Morning Vietnam. And then we would have occasionally a day off. And so, because in Da Nang it was very organized. You know, there was electricity, there's running water, there's all these things, and we had a definitive schedule at the center. But occasionally we had a day off. The day off, a lot of us would go to the orphanages. And these are some pictures of the kids that were there. And sometimes Red Cross chapters sent us stuff. And if it wasn't stuff that was appropriate for the guys, we would sometimes take it there. The gentleman on the bottom is Matthew Zemansky, a good friend. There were 2 hospitals in Da Nang, military hospitals. So we would go to the military hospitals if we had a day off, because we were service to the able-bodied, not to hospitals, because hospitals had their own. They did not have girls or women, but they had field directors. But we would go, again, we could read to them, write letters for them, etc. And then Red Cross believed that while we were there, we should change assignments every 3 times the year we were there. So just when you fit in, just when you figured everything out, we didn't travel in groups, 1 person we sent out, 1 person. So it was, I'd gone to Hong Kong on R&R, and when I came back, they told me before I left, I was going to go from I Corps way up there, down there where it says 3 Corps, you see Saigon, and then you see Benoit. Benoit was one of the largest air bases there. And that's where I went. And I said goodbye to the French villa and hello Quonset hut. Now we were protected because we had that chicken wire kind of on the outside. The Quonset hut you're making, but let me tell you, the Quonset hut used to be a dental clinic. And a dental clinic has a waiting room. So we had like a little couch, a little waiting room, we had a kitchen. Every room had a sink with running water. Potable water too. So it was quite the It also had a bunker. I think we took this picture because we wanted sandbags on top of the bunker. You know, a little more on top of the bunker. So if you got hit, at least there would be a sandbag or 2 between you. And Nang, we were hit and spent a lot of time in the bunker, but not as much as Benoit. Benoit was just kind of a regular thing. This picture is, of course, a gunner, and he's on a helicopter. If you've read any of the history about the guys who did this or who were helicopter pilots, they're amazing. If you ever had to look up to anyone, please look up to these guys. And that's one of the helicopters we flew in. It's called an LOH, you probably see them. LOH is mostly, that I learned afterwards, was used to draw out fire from the enemy, because these can fly really close to the ground, and they would fly in, draw the fire, and then we knew where the enemy was, and then they could attack the enemy there. So they sent them to transport Red Cross girls, and so we flew a lot in these. They're very lightweight. Please notice the pilot. And if you think he looks like he's 12 or 13, he might be. They were all very young guys. And when they saw an American girl in a blue dress, they wanted to show, you know, if somebody had a Chevy convertible, they wanted to show off when you drove them around. Yeah, tricky. This is taken from a helicopter. I took the picture. I don't know whether you can see it. Yeah, you see this line right here? That's the edge of the helicopter. I'm looking right down. I don't think I realized until Len and I maybe went to Alaska or Hawaii that there were doors on helicopters. Oh no, oh no. We were strapped in, we had the, yeah, so this is what a B-52 does. And this is what a landing zone is, or a fire base. The first one I think says an LZ. An LZ is just somewhere our guys cleared out the jungle or whatever so that a helicopter can come in. No fixed wing is coming in. A fire base, they've been there a little longer, and they have guns, big guns. And they live underground. They live underground. I would go out and visit them, spend an hour, whatever it took on a helicopter. And because I was only 22, I couldn't figure out who organized this war, that they couldn't come back and take a shower, you know, and then go back the next day. Why were they spending the nights out there in those conditions? But I was not running the war. Anyhow, these are combat infantry soldiers. You can see. The woman there is T. Johnson. I served with her for a long time, and I think you can see the mud and the dirt. We were covered most of the time. This is just a cute one. Yeah, I don't think you can see. It's a barbershop. And there's the guys with the barbershop. By the way, if any of you recognize any of these guys, please tell me. Because I don't know any of their names. And I got my hair cut there, by the way, because we all had short hair. So they're holding up a little sign that says, "I'm short." Tom will know what that means. We kept little calendars when you got down to about 100 days or 50 days, and if you were short, and being short, you were probably more nervous the last few days than you were even the first few days you got there, because you weren't sure whether you could make it out. Here again, now you tell me what the rank is of that guy standing there looking at the other guy load the gun. And you just think about living in that condition for that length of time. And it was hot. And you see the jungle. We all know about Agent Orange and what that did and how they are living there. And you see that guy, the far guy with that smile, that's what we were going for. I want to read to you the same General McCaffrey, because he wrote an article in Vietnam Magazine in about 2006. And he's talking about the combat infantry soldier. And he wrote this. He was a captain when he was there. And he says, "We can still remember the green, suffocating, and beautiful triple canopy jungle, the intense burning heat and humidity. Life in the jungle meant never-ending leeches on your legs and testicles and armpits, the utter exhaustion and back-breaking physical misery of life in combat. We lived like animals. We dug like moles. We carried individual loads of 90-plus pounds, an M16, an M79 grenade launcher, or an M16 machine guns, small iron arms, ammunition, and trip flares, and 6 quarts of water, and hand grenades, and claymore mines, and smoke grenades, CA explosives, entrenching tools, and pickaxes, and some food. 1 pair of extra socks and half a towel. We looked sick and malnourished, and our uniforms were frequently in shreds. We constantly had multiple minor injuries and crotch rot and infected bug bites, and our hands were blistered from digging. Sometimes our picture was taken as much, and it's interesting, when I got back home, I worked in a hospital, not as a nurse, and a guy said to me, "Judy, I have a picture of you," and I'd been home for 3 or 4 months. I said, "You can't have a picture of me." He did. He saw me, they took a picture, and he had it with him when he went home. And life in the rear was a little different. On the bases and large installation was much safer and more comfortable. Nonetheless, people died on these bases because the rockets and the mortars and the overruns. But a general rule, it took 10 troops to support every soldier carrying a rifle. So not everybody, they used to show those, Walter Cronkite and all them showed that bloody mess on TV. That was a very small percentage of what people went through, all of which was horrible. At the height of the war, there were roughly 540,000 troops in country, 540,000. And approximately 60,000 were rifle-carrying frontline soldiers. A lot of guys were not even issued a weapon. And 40,000 engaged at any one point. If you compare that to what they called the greatest generation, the average infantryman in South Pacific during World War II saw about 40 days of combat in 4 years. 40 days, 4 years. The average infantryman in Vietnam saw about 240 days of combat in a 1 year, thanks to the mobility of that helicopter. Now, we were constantly asked, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And we always said, we're here because you're here. And we kept smiling. Sometimes food would go out with us on the helicopters. We rode in working helicopters. We didn't have a nice special, no, whatever was available. So they always said the stuff tasted better, if we served it. Sometimes when we got there, they only had the sea rats, and if they always liked to offer us the fruit cocktail of peaches, because that was about the only thing that was any good in the package. I'm always hoping somebody will tell me they got home. Another helicopter coming in. Most of the time, I never had to stay overnight out there, but occasionally there was this war going on and it would interfere, and some of us were occasionally trapped out there. A lot of times we were not able to get back to our base, like Benoit. I was lucky enough, Benoit was close enough to Saigon. Sometimes they'd drop us off in Saigon, we could stay at a hotel. We had nothing with us, ladies, and the hotel they had no towels. The drapes will work sometimes. Those are going to be officers, and that's first cav. And here we are. Yeah, we laughed. We had to laugh a lot. I'm first there, and then T. Johnson that you saw before. In the middle is T was from Mississippi, Bobby was from California, and Linda was from Maine. Most of us came from the South, by the way. There were very few people from the Northeast and very few from the West Coast. And when we think about where all of our military installations are and the number of people who are in the military, we sometimes, the South wins out. That is our helicopter pad. It was about maybe 2 blocks from our Quonset hut, so we go and wait. Don't assume that there's a helicopter who's just ours, and it's clean and it's nice. No, we climbed in sometimes. I remember a flight with some ROK soldiers, the Republic of Korea soldiers. They have their own reputation there. And so there was not one to pick the 6 of us up. There were going to be 3 different helicopters hopefully coming in. Then we have holidays. We had holidays there too. So it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, and these are cards, they open up. They're quite, now you can imagine if we're going to deliver one out there on a LZ and say, good luck, right? Because because this is what is gonna be served, because you got Thanksgiving and Christmas. How special could that be? Now, I could give you a test to find the one different letter here, but I'm not gonna do that. The only difference, you're still gonna get your mincemeat pie, you're still gonna get your pumpkin pie, your fruit cocktail, but at Christmas you're having iced tea, and Thanksgiving you're having iced tea. Why the military would go through that, I have no idea. I never saw any of that food on Thanksgiving, and on Christmas I had a different thing. And the different thing was, this is Bob Hope's show. All of you watched them, right?
Yes.
And to be able to go, I was lucky enough at Indiana University, 4 out of the years I was there, we had Bob Hope as a headliner for the big college weekend. So I already seen Bob Hope 3 times. This is at Long Bend Base, which is northeast of Saigon, maybe 20, 25 miles. You could drive, by the way, if the war wasn't going on right that time at that place. Long Bend, as I said before, had about 60,000 troops. One place that had all that, the putting green and everything. At this Bob Hope show, they think there were 30,000 people, and you can imagine what you could see from way up there. And because I took these pictures, I got to go. Why did I get to go? Because of that guy. Because at the time, I was in the hospital. I had something called kidney stones. And at the hospital, they wanted to know if I wanted to go. Remember, I'm the only girl in the hospital. I said no, because I was gonna have to wear the blue pajamas, and I didn't want anyone seeing a round-eyed girl that needed help, so I said no. Matthew had been transferred down to, he's in first cap, down to that area, evidently called the Red Cross. They figured out, I don't know, it may have been the fact that he was a doctor, he called, and he came to the hospital. He was able to check me out, so I could go to and look like a regular person, and I couldn't stay the whole time. I really was sick, but because of him, I got to go to the Red Cross. So this is the unit I was with the most, and I've stayed in contact with. Again, there are 627 of us. We're at that age. Most of the women that were going were older than me. They'd already worked a year. They had already. And because we're exposed to the same Agent Orange and all the other things, if not more so than most of the soldiers, we are affected by the Parkinson's, etc. By the way, not a penny of your tax dollars have ever gone to any Red Cross world. We are not covered by anything. If we stayed with the Red Cross, I assume the Red Cross with a pension. The Red Cross eventually didn't even have all of our names. We have been keeping records ourselves because they don't have it, but it's 58 years ago. So these women, we had a little gathering, Lynn went to. Linda Bale is she's an artist up in Freeport, Maine. She's the dark-haired one. That's me. Next, Pat, the dark-haired one, owns a winery in Oregon. Mary Claire is from New Orleans, and she now lives and has lived for a long time in Newton, Mass. T. Johnson is from Mississippi. She's a social worker in Mississippi. And Bobby McDaniels was originally from California. She died about 1.5 years ago in North Carolina. So we came from all parts, in all different majors, etc. Then, are women on the wall? And if you're a civilian, the answer is no. You can't even have a statue on the wall, or in the mall if you're a civilian, but military can. And there are 8 names, almost all of them nurses, who were in the military when they died in Vietnam. But as you can see, we have journalists. Is Beth here? Beth was a journalist over there at about the same time I was. So we'll have to get Beth to tell us her story. Out of the 627, 3 of us died. Lucy died of an autoimmune disease. Hannah Cruz, about 6 weeks after I left Benoit, she died in a Jeep accident. And Jenny was she was there for about 2 weeks, and she was stabbed to death by an American soldier. So we always talk about the average age of guys who were there. There are rumors going around, there were 15, 16, 17-year-olds. But of those that died there, the average age was about 23. Still incredibly, incredibly young. And you can see the variation, and I'm sure these figures change. In fact, I think you can go, but we know there's over 58,000 names on the wall. This is a cartoonist who appreciates what women did, and he made this little cartoon, and I don't know whether you can read the nurses saying, because they had simple lives, I had a 16-hour shift yesterday, but was able to get 4 hours of sleep before more choppers came in this morning. And there is women, if some of you have read that book, great book, talks about the women nurses in Vietnam. The Red Cross girl comes back with that and says, we took a mortar attack at my first base camp this morning, and a couple of sniper rounds landing here. Still 3 more fire bases to visit today. Do you want a donut? Now, about the damn donuts. I never saw a donut. I once spoke to McCaffrey's cook, and I said, if you remember, you know, I mean, there was all things crawling there. There was all kinds of stuff. It was hot. You could have dust and mud in the same moment. No self-respecting donut was going to appear in Vietnam. It just was not going to happen. I have a poem here that was written by a guy whose initials are only DLN. It was published in the Vietnam Women's Memorial Project, and it is to appreciate the role that women played in Vietnam. And it's called Angel in War. Listen now, I have a story to tell about some women who lived through hell. They came to us not on wings of doves, they came to us from choppers above. They fought in the war in a special way, 12, sometimes 16 hours a day. She may have been a nurse or volunteer, if only for a second we forgot our fears. They came to war not with guns to fight, but only a smile to brighten our life. Listen now to the story I tell about these women who lived through hell. For they were young like you and me, and how much more special can they be? How many letters did she write while their families slept safely at night? How many faces does she still see? Well, how many faces does she still see, like memories we have, both you and me? Listen now to the stories they tell. They are women who lived through hell. She was like a sister who could not see, we could not see, but she brought happiness to some, you see. They fought in the war by our side, and like our sisters, they often cried. Let us not forget the stories they tell, for they were our sisters who lived through hell. I have lots of letters. In fact, I don't go through, I have a little chest with this stuff in it, and I find letters that they could write to us, not that we encouraged it, because it could be mailed just to Judy at Benoit, American Red Cross. So I have a lot of those. One technique I use, remember there was no cell phones, there was no communication with home. When you said goodbye, you were gonna be gone for a year. So, what I would do, when I would find a guy from Indiana, I would give him my mom's phone number. And I would say, could you please call her and tell her I'm okay? And so my poor mother would get calls, because they would sometimes land in San Francisco, and thought, well, I'll call her. And she would get all these bizarre calls, and then she was even more worried about me, because all these strange guys would call. It was all I could think of. I mean, what are we gonna do? Now I'll read, I think this is about it, yeah. So, obviously, I had no clue what I was getting into. But the congressional record in January of 2020, I'll read what they say about the women that I served with. And it doesn't necessarily totally apply to me. But it was interesting that Congress recognized our service at all. So, from 1965 to 1972, 627 brave women served mostly one-year tours for the Red Cross in various parts of Vietnam, invited by the military to provide a morale program for the active duty troops. They were issued orders and followed the military chain of command. This program was the Red Cross Supplemental Recreational Activities Overseas, SRAO. Quoting General Westmoreland, from a morale viewpoint, there's no finer contribution Red Cross can make in the effort in Vietnam. A quest for adventure, a desire to do something real, idealism, and a minimal salary, we were paid, took these young women to Vietnam. During that time, the whole evolution of the role of women was changing. These Red Cross donor dollies took it seriously that equal rights meant equal responsibility. In some respects, the donor dollies began the move to open the field to women who had previously been limited to non-combat roles. From going to war, they learned the power of peace. Truth be told, these women are taken back to Vietnam every time they see a veteran and every time a helicopter flies over. They left Vietnam, but Vietnam doesn't leave us. And I came home in August of 1969. So, if you have any questions. So, any questions? I always, obviously, we didn't know, but as you get older, you sometimes think, General Westmoreland went to the Red Cross and came up, and adults in a room, came up with the idea of having young American women fly through the war. I mean, don't think those helicopters had it, we were shot at. Why? You just wonder, did they not, I don't know. I always think, were they really sitting around? They were grown-ups. They'd say, oh yeah, we'll just put them in blue dresses and we'll just fly them there. They can't get in there because they're getting shot at. They'll go somewhere else. And they'll learn incoming and outgoing. They'll figure that out. Anyhow, no questions of any kind? Wow, yes.
When your mother said Judy K.
Yes,
what was it like for her?
For me, it was hard because my sisters had left. My dad had died when I was 14, and my sisters had left, and I was kind of, we lived on a farm, and she was going to be left with that farm. But she kind of knew me, so I think, and when I now ask my sisters, because, and people that were around her, then I find out that it was not a pleasant experience for a year, waiting and figuring out. In fact, at one point, the Red Cross contacted me because I had not written her, she had not heard from me. So I thought I was doing a good job, but the days and the times, and sometimes it was not easy to be cheery. But we had to be, that was okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, Gloria.
Let me grab the microphone.
Oh, here's one. I can do this.
What was the best?
Hold on, it's not on. Apologies for my reach. Okay.
What was the best of your experiences that you remember now? And what was the worst?
Well, we've been interviewed, all of us have been interviewed. There's a movie, there's a documentary, June, called, 627. And there are women that I know, I was not in. There is a core group who like to be interviewed, who are, et cetera. And then there's the rest of us, and I'm in the group of the rest of us. So I was interviewed by this young reporter, and I think I give the thing to Carrie, and I said, no, I think he said, you were scared for your life every day. I don't think a morale builder is going to be scared for their life every day. Besides, I'm 22, I'm invincible. You wonder why the military draft guys early? That would be it. The thing that carries over the most, and it's odd as heck, it's the helicopters do it, lots of things do it to me. But someone broke into that Quonset hut one night. A soldier came in the middle of the night. And I was the unit director, so I'm in charge of all. We didn't have guards or anything. And I am not afraid of, I will preface that by saying, never at one time, my language cleared up a lot in Vietnam, by the way. My senior in college, it was rough. But I never, ever used any foul language there. I also didn't drink much there, compared to the senior year in college. But, and no one was ever inappropriate. Because people will say, with all the stuff that's going on, all of these guys, all the time. I mean, we walked out of our Quonset hut, we were the only ones, there were no women. But one soldier really, really wanted to see an American girl, and he came in that Quonset hut through a window. I'm in charge, the door to mine is open, and I think I see a shadow. We're all there. I think I see a shadow go by. And I thought, that can't be. But I got up, and one of the other, Bobby McDaniels, et cetera, we figured out the guy was in the back, because next to my room in the back was a little open area. So I still, that disturbs me, and has nothing to do with the war, nothing to do with the war. Anyhow, he escaped, he wasn't. The interesting part about that is we didn't have a guard in front, we were just in the base. And I'm in charge, and I'm 22. So I decided at that point we really needed somebody outside so that this wasn't going to be happening. So the general on that particular base, I don't know his name, lived in a trailer, and the trailers were air conditioned trailers. So we went there to his trailer, I didn't even wait for his office, and I just said, this happened last night. He said, yeah, I heard about it, and we're gonna get some security for you. I said, you're going to get some security? Is it gonna be today? He said, well, we can't do it today. I said, oh, okay. And I start looking around his trailer, and he says, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to figure out where 6 of us are gonna sleep in here tonight. I'd been in the war for a while. He wasn't kidding. We had somebody that night. So that to me, and then when I realized what happened, to the other girl within 2 weeks of breaking it. So the best part, I guess seeing, I have an incredible great respect for the military. I had no military before and afterwards, and there was a parade, coming home is another whole story, and anyone who knows, about Vietnam. But New York had a coming home for us, and I think, do you remember, Len, when that was? It was a long time, 15, 20 years after the war. Holly's in 5th grade, it might have been like 1985 or something. And Len was gonna drop me off, maybe, we're gonna go across the Brooklyn Bridge, we're gonna march. And, I'm not a city person, not like, 90% of the people in here, except me and Sue Ann. So the thought of being in the city, but then some of the guys came in their uniforms. So I was able to get on the train or the subway, or however you get around, because he dropped me off. And I was surrounded again by the American military. And I felt very, very safe, very respected. So maybe that's the best part. But that decision, and I think if you look at your own life, you're gonna say there was one decision that made the difference. And my wandering into that career fair made a dramatic difference in my life, and has led me to all the great things that, I've had.
What would you tell a grandchild?
Well, my son, first of all, my kids really didn't know. At one point, Kevin came home, maybe he was in high school or something. He said, today, the history teacher asked if any of our fathers had been in Vietnam. And Len had served, but he wasn't in Vietnam. So he says, I raised my hand, I said, my mom. And he says, no, I meant, people who were in Vietnam. So I went to talk there. It wasn't very effective because I really hadn't processed it. It's taken about 50 years, which is pretty remarkable. Yes?
Did you come into contact with any Vietnamese people? And if you did, what?
Yes, that is asked all the time because I like Vietnamese food, and the answer to that is no. We did have Vietnamese help in both places. They hired them to wash our uniforms and to clean the house, because we really, weren't around. When I was first in Bien Hoa, we decided to there's a town in Bien Hoa, so we decided to go over there. And then a general came coming by and said, this is not safe, what are you doing out here? In Saigon, you could walk around fairly well. The answer to that is no. I know no Vietnamese at all. And one of the reasons is that one of the mama sons blew up the mess hall down the street. So just when we had a lot of people working, a lot of Vietnamese working on bases. And at one point, they were filling the sandbags outside the entrance to the base. And then, of course, they invaded by coming underground, and we were buying the sandbags. So, no, except through the orphanages, and I know some people, particularly soldiers, made that leap. We didn't really have a lot of free time, but also, I think it was ingrained because of too many instances where people had befriended, and then they were accused. So it was really a tricky, sometimes we would go through a village riding in a Jeep to get somewhere, and it was, you wanted to, the kids would come, because they were staring at us, and you wanted to touch them. We were warned not to touch them, because sometimes what they had in their hand was not something we should have. So it was a very tricky, I'm sad, and I've gone back, and I love it, but that is sadness. But given those circumstances, we had choices. Yes?
I think I can manage without the mic.
It's Helen. Yes,
I
Helen.
read the women.
Yes, the nurses,
By
yes.
Kristen Hanna,
Mm-hmm.
and
the thing that had me in tears the most was her experience after she got home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't believe the American people were so mean.
A little disappointing, to say the least, yes.
Did you experience that as well?
Well, no, well, okay. A lot of us did. If you said, what were you doing, or put it on a job application or anything, the judgment was immediately there, no matter whether you were civilian. What, you were in this war, the baby killers, etc. What happened to me is I came home in August to Indiana, and my mom let me be. I came home, it was so cold in August in Indiana, I could not get warm. I'd been hospitalized, by the way, 3 times there. Each time they threatened to medevac me. So I as we would say, vegged out for about maybe a month. She never knocked on the door and said, when are you getting a job? I don't know what happened with Tom. I know what happened with Dave, but I don't know how his experience was. So I didn't answer the phone, I just did nothing. The brain was just completely, shut down. So after about that time, the phone would ring, my mom worked, I answered it was the Red Cross calling. And I hadn't done the right things. When I flew into San Francisco, you're supposed to turn in your IDs and talk to the Red Cross so they'll figure out if you're nuts or not. If you're not nuts, you get to go home. If you are, we'll keep you a few more days. I didn't do anything. Once my flight landed, I got on the next one and went to O'Hare. So after about a month, the Red Cross called and said, do you still want to work? And I hung up and said, no. Then they called again and said, listen, we have a assistant field director, recreation therapist, job available near your home. And that was Rantoul, Illinois. Home, close to your home in the Midwest is several hundred miles. It's about 200 miles. So it was about 6 weeks, and I was, thought I had my brain back together again, and didn't communicate with anybody that was in Vietnam. I never responded to Matthew's letters. I didn't, nothing. So I went to Judy Air Force Base and was hired. And the reason my homecoming was not so bad is because I was back in what I call the arms of the military. I was on an Air Force base, working in an Air Force hospital. That's where the guy who came back, I'm on the wards, and he says, Judy, because I always wore my first name. I have a picture of you, and oh God, but he had seen me, in Vietnam. Because I did that, I avoided all the rest. And rarely, I remember once we were Len's friends, it was a really nice dinner party in Central Park West, and someone said, oh, Judy was in Vietnam. And the response from somebody else is, who could be so stupid?
Oh.
So with that, It kind of, you should kind of shut up. So I didn't have what the guys had. I believe what she says. But because of being in the arms, and I worked there maybe 2 years, I went to Walter Reed Army Hospital also, still not a nurse, don't. And worked there as the field director and recreation therapist too. So I know what they went down. Now, people will deny that, by the way. It goes on and has newspaper clippings about what some people went through. But Tom, what did you go through? We have one right here.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I did want to share a story.
Yes, is it the toilet paper story?
No, no.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
That shipload will live with me. No, to go back to what Helen was talking about. I was very fortunate. I worked for a company, I worked for Sylvania up in Boston. And I worked through my college career, and when I went in, they guaranteed me a job when I got out of the service after 2 years. So I didn't have that stigma of them, saying, oh, you were in the war. And I think what you were saying, Judy, is it was very definitely New England accepted what was going on. I don't think they improved it, but there wasn't very much unrest in the colleges at that time. But one of the things that I wanted to share was, as Judy mentioned, you worked, I was in the rear. I was in a maintenance battalion in the Trang, which is in the middle of Second Corps. And they worked 6 days a week, and they had Sunday off. And this is, I would say, we weren't as big as Da Nang, but I would say probably 20, 25,000. We had a very different group. We had a lot of Air Force. They had the headquarters for Second Corps was there, and they had a lot of ROK, which is the Republic of Korea, military there. And they added quite a different dynamic to things.
Yes, they did.
It's one of those things you would say, oh, you didn't mess with the rocks. They had no scruples. They would do some things. But my job was, I went over to be a motor pool maintenance officer. And of course the Army did this, catch-22. They put me in as a supply officer, running a depot after a period of time. And it was, just think of Kmart, and Lowe's, and Walmart superstores and everything like that, all in one place. We had everything but food, fuel, ammunition, and grave services. So we had a lot of stuff, and that's where I got the toilet paper. But, so I decided that for the day off, which was a Sunday, I would stay, and we had to be open 24 hours, 7 days a week for a convoy coming through needing supplies. So I would go, and the rest of the crew would be down at the beach with the ROK Army playing volleyball. And what I discovered when I was there, I was actually a year earlier than Judy.
He's older.
Yes. And it's cute. But anyway, I was over there so I would do this. And where the Trang was, it was a beautiful, as Judy mentioned, the beaches over there were just gorgeous. The Trang was the headquarters for Michelin, when Michelin was there mining the forests for their rubber, the natural rubber. So they had a lot of good restaurants and stuff. But so I'm in a rear unit, and they had a section of the peninsula that they had boarded off, and as a rear troop, you never got to shoot a gun. You were loading weapons.
Did you have a gun? Were you?
Yeah, I was issued a .45 when I got to my station. I wrapped it in oilcloth. I put it in an ammunition can. I put the ammunition can in my trunk. I locked my trunk. 364 days later, I went and got it out and said, hey, never used, driven on Sunday only. But anyway, what the troops would do with the captured enemy weapons, guns, AK-47s, rocket launchers, bazookas, anything that you could think of, hand grenades, and they would let the troops go down this section and they would be able to fire. They're over there, so they'd be shooting these things off, and it really was, I didn't realize it because every Sunday it sounded the same. Well, one of the things is I hated writing, and in those days they had these small little 10 by 10 cassette tape by tape. I don't know if you had seen this. And so it was really neat. You could tape about 40 minutes of a letter, put it in a little square plastic box, put a label on it, and they'd ship it. So I did this to my mother, and at that time I was dating Sue, my wife now, and I'd send it to them. So this went on for about a month and a half, 2 months, and one day I got a call from the general, come see me, you're in trouble. And I'm going, what'd I do? So I show up, and there is I'm not sure of the rank, but he was one of the highest Red Cross, and he said, we have received terrible, terrible information about you being put over here and lying to your folks and everything about what you're doing. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, here, and he played one of the tapes, and what the darn little cheap microphone picked up was all that booming and banging. It did sound like it was in World War II under siege. It was incredibly eye-opening, and I said, I haven't done any of that. So I stopped taping on the weekends. But the Red Cross.
You couldn't tape just at night when you were being hit, or you weren't hit?
We were never under, other than I was there for the first 10 offenses.
I should have been.
Yeah, but no, we were not that, we were well protected. But it was just the idea the Red Cross reached out and very, very quickly, take care of this problem. But it's one of those funds, I sit back and laugh about it because I was sitting in a Jeep, sucking on a beer, watching over 5,000 containers of toilet paper.
It may have even been a cold beer.
Yeah, oh yeah. I had supply, I knew where the refrigerators were. But I thank you for this. This was very opening.
Yeah, very nice.
One more? Yes, hi. Oh, Sylvia, yes, Sylvia. Yeah.
Thank you.
I do want to say, in case you think, I did go down in a helicopter because some of these helicopters just couldn't make the trip. They worked all day, and sometimes they assumed you could get there. And these 12-year-olds who were driving these things, but anyhow, the guy knew how, I'm always, when they're crashing in the Hudson these days, I always think, my gosh, get a 12-year-old. He knew how to auto-rotate, so we were able to find a little clearing in the jungle, because we're flying over the war. We were, the gunners went off, and we were, we took a few too. But, and within just a few minutes, maybe it was 10 or 15, but the woman I was with, my partner that day, was new in country. And I think she thought I was nuts, because I'm just in there, it's another day. It's another day. And it worked out fine. Yes, Sylvia?
Judy.
Yes.
You mentioned that choices affected. Did you ever regret your choice of going to Vietnam?
No. I would like not to have, it would be nice, quite frankly, it'd be nice to not have the baggage. But that decision to go and survive it and come back and say yes to the Red Cross about a stupid place called Rantoul, Illinois. I went from there to Walter Reed Army Hospital, but when I went, I took 2 souvenirs. I took a master's degree from the University of Illinois and a major. So, what kind of
Well, no, I don't really mean after the fact.
Oh, while I was there.
When you found out
Uh-huh.
what Vietnam was like,
No,
you never regretted
no,
it?
no, I don't know whether it was 22, I don't know whether it was the women. I was never afraid in Vietnam. And we didn't drink, I didn't drink, I mean, senior year in college, and Matus. Remember those Matus? Sure, that's why I was drinking cheap. They were $1 in the PS. But I knew, first of all, I also became unit director, and I was.
Say that again?
I became in charge of the Benoit group, so
Uh-huh.
anything that happened, no, I don't, and there were women who were afraid, and women did go home early. So it's not as if everybody who was recruited succeeded. And they would go home occasionally for illness, not much. As I said, as soon as they said, you're going to Japan, I said, no, I'm not. So, no, we could not have done our job. And the amazing part, I know current events, we all come and we, moan about the state of it. At night, we did not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it, but it was always, oh, I saw so-and-so. And also, we have these great writers that came out of it, and one woman wrote a poem about the fact that, we never knew their names. And rarely did I might ask the guy's name, I'm not gonna remember it. And one of the reasons not to remember was great, because we may go see that same unit. It may not be on that hill or that LZ, but we never asked, where Slick was or the Indiana guy. You didn't ask. And that may seem cruel and stupid, but we had to keep going and we had to get up the next morning. Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind you that you still signed up for the Peace Corps.
That's true, yeah, you Peace Corps people.
Yeah.
Yes, I was accepted, after a while, I guess Rantoul wasn't as exciting, nothing against you, dear. I signed up to go into the Peace Corps, and I was accepted to Botswana, and it took me 48 years to get to Botswana, because I decided that maybe I would get married, and I did not go to Botswana. But the Peace Corps was always, I didn't know married couples could go, we would have gone. But people ask us that all the time, were we afraid? And,
Not so much afraid, just regret that you got involved, what you wanted.
no. Yes, I can't see. Oh, is it Margaret?
Was post-traumatic stress an issue?
Wow, that's
You know
interesting.
they existed at the time.
That's right. PTSD did not exist. And just to show you what a horrible person I am, in about the 1980s, the Middletown Record, does anybody remember they had a sheet in the middle, and eventually I knew who it was Jeannie Christie, and she was talking about having served in Vietnam, with me, and she had PTSD. And I was so angry, I wrote to the editor, I called them, and I said, no, we didn't do that. We didn't do that. The soldiers are the ones who went through hell. It was not us. I was still a little, but yes, and the effects of Agent Orange, yes. Yes, Margaret. Thank you, Cynthia.
And after Margaret, this should be our last question, because we have to set up for Shalom Space. So,
Yes.
Did it create pacifism
In my part. On my part or on the women?
among people in general and on your part?
No. I'm against war, but I also am not gonna condemn the people who gave me this nation that I have. I'm not gonna say you shouldn't have fought in the Civil War to my great uncles. Should we have been in Vietnam? Was it a justified war? Do I hate war? Absolutely. I've seen what it can do to people. Yes. We're not gonna talk about body bags or what I saw when it went into the hospital. No. But I also respect the fact that we are living in a nation that was built on blood. So I can't quite get that. And I must say, I try not to think of it a lot. So thank you. Yes, one last.
Is the pin with with the name Judy?
That was in Vietnam, where that,
That's
you know,
what I
it's a little, and the dog tags, and Tom will know, Tom would have known why you have two, you know you have two, right? Tom, you have one for your toe,
Right.
Oh,
and
wow.
one for your.
That's one for your what?
Well, if, in battle, which I was never, by the way, I never had a helmet, I never had a flak vest, I never had a weapon, I never had fatigues, what you saw. Although we had culottes too, but other than that, there was a question over here.
And a dog tag.
The dog tags, yes.
You need two for one.
Well, it intertwines.
Yes.
And this one, right, Tom? Well, we called it a toe. Some guys out of the field put it on their boots. But this is the second one. If you're, injured, then this or dead, this would help to identify your body. And this is from the helicopter that I went down in. That's what reminded me, because it was such an unusual occurrence, that they had a tradition. And that was, they would bring the chopper that went down. This is part of the gear thing, and they made bracelets for those people who went down in a helicopter. Not that it happened enough, but there seemed to be a whole business of people doing this. But if you ever meet nurses, if you ever meet anyone who ever flew a helicopter, the admiration has to be beyond. And then we have people like Claudia, who was also a civilian, who also did. I flew in a blue Braniff, so I didn't fly with her around, and that was another whole story. Well, thank you all for listening.